If you're a regular on this channel, you probably already know who I think Sandrone really is. I've been saying the same thing over and over again since Fontaine. Well, if you're new, you probably already figured it out from the title of the video. Still, today we're gonna analyze what Sandrone told us at the end of the Luna II Archon Quest to understand what she meant to say as well as the reason why she joined the Tsaritsa. But first, this is a theory video and leaks are prohibited in the comment section. I will use information available in the game, but my theories and conclusions are not to be considered the official lore of the game, unless I got something right and it's confirmed in a later update of the game itself. Well then, grab your holy blade and let's get this video started. We will gracefully ignore the fact that although what Sandrone told us was extremely interesting, no one really asked. She basically had no reason to tell us any of that. While we as players can understand why this story had to be told, they were refreshing our memories about Alain so that when she's released we will already know the first part of her backstory. From the traveler point of view, it just made no sense, even if we were to think that this was a way to repay us for helping Colombina out. Anyway, Sandrone basically told us how the two most intelligent people in the history of Fontaine, Rene the Petrichor and Alain Guillotin, let their desires and delusions plunge them into pure despair, making absurd and unethical decisions all to save Fontaine and the whole world from the apocalypse. If you didn't play the narzissenkreuz war quests, Rene came up with a war formula that showed him the impending end of the world when he was still a child. That's how much of a genius he was. So he decided to rely on supernatural forces, like the Abyss, to find a way to save everybody. He first experimented on his close friend, Jacob, who for reasons that are still unknown was able to eat pieces of Elena's, one of Reindotter's abyssal monsters, which slowly transformed him into what Rene defined as a neo-human, a kind of human that evolved beyond the concept of humanity, capable of surviving the apocalypse, which in reality meant that he turned into an abyssal monster himself, more specifically an iniquitous Baptist. Rene believed that this was the only way to prevent this apocalypse from wiping out humanity, even though humans would have had to give up on their humanity in the process. But when he realized that Jacob was a unique case and that obviously the Abyss is toxic and lethal to humans, he decided to extract and absorb the people's wills. He would have been the only survivor of the apocalypse and humanity would have survived within him, becoming the inheritor of the entire world's will. He basically believed that he would have transcended fate itself, becoming a descender as a consequence. Of course, his plan failed. We stopped him in the Primordial Sea, and his whole war formula even turned out to be wrong to begin with, along with the fact that no one can become a descender, because it's not a quality or a title that can somehow be acquired later in life. On the other hand, Alain Guillotin had always believed in human intellect, so although Rene showed him the impending apocalypse, he never really considered anything transcendental as a feasible means to save the world. Reason why he focused his entire life on the study of machines and mathematical formulas. He used science to solve problems. He figured out pneumosia annihilation and found a way to use it as a power source for Fontaine, for example. His story though took a turn for the worse when both him and his sister, Mary-Annette, became members of the Maréchaussée Phantom and they began looking into a secret society, the Narzissenkreuz Ordo, that had been founded within the Institute of Natural Philosophy where Alain used to work. When he found out that this society had been founded by Rene and Jacob, Alain and Mary-Annette confronted them inside Elena's remains, but something went wrong, everything went kaboom, and Mary-Annette lost her life. This event also threw pieces of Alain's mecha all over the place, and some of them lodged into Elena's body, which eventually caused the birth of the Melusine. Anyway, what Alain never knew was that Mary-Annette didn't completely die. She had merged with another member of the Narzissenkreuz Ordo who was present on the scene, Lyris, the former director of the Narzissenkreuz Institute, the orphanage where Alain, Mary-Annette, Rene and Jacob grew up. From Mary-Anne's death onward, Alain only ever cared about machines, and when the Institute of Natural Philosophy got submerged in one of the Fontainian floods, he founded the Fontaine Research Institute of Kinetic Energy Engineering and just kept working on his formulas all his life to find a solution to the prophesied flood that would have dissolved everyone in Fontaine. Now, what Sandrone told us is more or less what we've already learned from the Narzissenkreuz world quests, but she added a few new pieces of information we didn't know. Sandrone had already been built back then, she was one of Alain's friends, which means that she is around 400 years old, and she stayed with him until he died. When he knew his time was running out, he asked her to destroy his research, which she did, but not before reading it all, recording it into her memory, because she believed it would have been a waste for his research to simply vanish just like that. We knew that before he died, Alain locked himself into his workshop and simply vanished, leaving behind traces indicating that something had been built, while Sandrone told us that Alain realized that the Narzissenkreuz Institute needed a human to see its story through to the end, that he gave up on his formulas in favor of the fairy tales that lyrics used to tell the children before bed, and that he eventually picked this orphanage as his final resting place, which means that Alain must have done something completely uncharacteristic of him toward the end of his life. Now, it has always been pretty clear since A Winter Night's Lasso was released that Sandrone and Polonia were Fontainians because of their clothes, and it was also clear that Sandrone was a puppet, considering the name that Tsaritsa picked for her was Marionette. But if she's the puppet, then who is the puppeteer? This is what has always led me to believe that Alain had placed his persona and will into Polonia, the automaton that he built in his workshop at the end of his life before vanishing completely, which would mean that Polonia is, as I like to say, a puppet puppeteer puppeteering a puppet. This would have been uncharacteristic of Alain because he never accepted supernatural means to reach his goals, but it may have been acceptable because he basically became one of his creations, so he would have still placed his trust in the product of human intellect. The problem now is figuring out who Sandrone is. Alain's life basically used to revolve around his formulas and his sister, Mary-Anne, and her death completely shook Alain's existence, so it wouldn't be too absurd to think that he tried to create a mechanical Mary-Anne that could have lived the life the real Mary-Anne sadly couldn't, and to give her free will, just like a real human, he never told her that he created her, so that she wouldn't have to obey him because he was her creator or master. And very curiously, Sandrone never mentioned Mary-Anne's name while talking about Alain's story, despite how important she was in his life. The next but final problem is the reason why Sandrone joined the Tsaritsa. While what we've talked about up until now can be considered a safe guess based on what we've known since Fontaine, in this case we can just speculate, since we only know that she has a reason that forces her to follow the Tsaritsa. She has a goal that she can reach only if she stays with her. If you play Star Rail, you might have had the feeling that the Tsaritsa is somewhat similar to Elio of the Stellaron Hunter. If his followers do what his scripts say, they will eventually achieve their life goals, and the same seems to be happening with the Harbingers. They all have a life goal they want to achieve, so they join the Tsaritsa because she promised to give them the means to achieve those goals, asking for help in return, which in most cases means retrieving the noses. In Sandrone's case, I think she's simply looking for her creator, because it must be frustrating for a sentient mechanical construct not to know who created her and what her purpose is. Staying with the Tsaritsa has given her the resources and the authority she needed to acquire equally intelligent constructs, like Curve, hoping to find another robot that was created by the same person who created her, finally figuring out her origins. Of course, there's a plethora of possibilities, I'm just sharing the one that I think makes more sense based on what we know right now. She's probably coming out in a few more updates. I doubt she'll be released in Luna 3 with Colombina, so we still have a little bit of time to figure her story out. Which also means that if you have your own theory about who Sandrone really is and what she's trying to achieve through the Tsaritsa, do tell me in the comment section and maybe we can figure it out together. And that's it, I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and if you're interested in Genshin Impact theory videos, consider subscribing. My next video is probably gonna be about the Sumeru event that should start soon, but one of my viewers also made me realize that there's another topic that I could make a video about. Something that I haven't talked about yet, but that is extremely important to Teyvat, so I'll start researching it right away. Well then, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, over and out.